March 14, 1945. The village of Mühlbach, 30 kilometers west of Frankfurt. Rain hammered against the cobblestones as Technical Sergeant Lawrence Fairweather stepped into the workshop that smelled of oil, sawdust, and secrets. The old man behind the counter didn't look up from the pocket watch he was repairing, his magnifying loupe catching the dim light filtering through windows that hadn't been cleaned in months. Fairweather was 28, a precision instrument specialist from Worcester, Massachusetts, where his family had operated a tool and die shop for 3 generations. He understood the language of gears and tolerances, of mechanisms that required patience measured in fractions of millimeters. The Army had sent him forward with the 5th Armored Division not to fight, but to evaluate. Every factory, every workshop, every manufacturing facility in liberated territory needed assessment. What could be salvaged? What could be used? What secrets lay hidden in the debris of the Reich's industrial capacity? The clockmaker finally glanced up. He was perhaps 70, with hands that trembled slightly and eyes that held the weariness of someone who had seen too much. "You are American," he said in careful English. "You have come to take inventory, yes?" Something like that. Fairweather removed his helmet, water streaming from its rim. "I'm told you do precision work, chronometers, specialty timers." A pause stretched between them, filled only by the ticking of 100 timepieces. "I make clocks," the old man said finally. Nothing more. But Fairweather had already seen what others might have missed. The lathe in the corner was too precise for simple clock repair. The measuring instruments on the workbench belonged in an engineering laboratory. And beneath a canvas tarp in the back room, just visible through the doorway, sat something that caught light like machined steel. The village had been liberated 4 days earlier. German forces had withdrawn in good order, leaving little destruction, as if Mühlbach held no strategic value worth defending. But Captain Wendell Cross, the division's intelligence officer, had received a tip from a French liaison officer whose network stretched deep into German territory. A clockmaker in Mühlbach, precision work, specialty contracts. The kind of details that meant something in a war where timing devices triggered everything from bombs to sophisticated targeting systems. Fairweather moved deeper into the workshop, his boots leaving wet prints on the wooden floor. "I'm not here to cause trouble for you, Mr. Dietrich, Ernst Dietrich." The old man set down his tools with deliberate care. "And I have told others I make clocks. The Wehrmacht, they ordered chronometers, yes, for vehicles, for officers. Standard timekeeping, nothing classified. The Wehrmacht doesn't use lathes that can hold tolerances to a 10,000th of an inch for vehicle chronometers." Fairweather stopped at the workbench, running his finger along the pristine surface of a milling machine that wouldn't have looked out of place in a Swiss watch factory. "This is master-grade equipment, so either you're the best clockmaker in Germany or you've been making something that requires this level of precision." Ernst Dietrich stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a long moment he studied the American sergeant, weighing something in the balance of his conscience. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, the careful English giving way to something more urgent. "How many men do you have outside?" "Just my driver." Fairweather met the old man's gaze steadily. "And a captain waiting for my report back at headquarters. If you're going to tell me something, now would be the time." The clockmaker moved to the front door, locked it, and drew the shade. Then he walked to the back room and pulled away the canvas tarp. Beneath it sat not 1 but 3 lathes, 2 precision mills, and a rack of specialty tools that Fairweather recognized from classified briefings about German weapons development. But it was the wooden crate in the corner that made Ernst's hands shake as he pried it open. Inside, nestled in straw packing, lay approximately 24 devices. Each was roughly the size of a pocket watch, with intricate mechanisms visible through glass backs. But these were no timepieces. Fairweather lifted one carefully, his trained eye immediately recognizing the sophistication of the design. Geared reducers, tension springs calibrated to specific release points, contact switches that would close with mechanical certainty after a predetermined interval. "Timers," he said quietly. "Delayed action fuses." "No," Ernst's voice cracked. "Yes, they are timers, but not for what you think." He reached into the crate and withdrew a folded document, its edges worn from handling. "I need you to understand. I need someone to understand before it is too late." The document was a technical schematic, hand-drawn with the precision of a master draftsman. It showed the timer mechanism integrated into a larger assembly. Fairweather's blood went cold as he recognized the housing: artillery shells, large caliber. The kind Germany had been firing at Allied positions for months. You built delayed action artillery fuses. The words came out flat, accusatory. I built what they told me to build. Ernst sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. October 1943, the Gestapo came to my workshop. They had found my name on a list of master craftsmen capable of precision manufacture. They showed me the design. They told me the quota, 50 units per month. They told me what would happen to my daughter in Berlin if I refused. Fairweather set the timer down carefully. Outside, the rain continued its steady assault on the village. How many did you make? According to my records, 947. Ernst's hands trembled as he lit a cigarette with a silver lighter that had seen better days. According to the Gestapo's records, 947. I don't understand. The old man stood and moved to a false panel in the workshop's rear wall. It opened to reveal a hidden compartment, packed with more wooden crates. According to reality, I made 1,894. Fairweather stared at the hidden cache, his mind racing through the implications. You made extra. Why? Ernst pulled a second schematic from his pocket, this one more worn than the first. Because I am a clockmaker, Sergeant Fairweather. I understand precision. I understand timing. And I understand that every mechanism, no matter how sophisticated, has a weakness that only its maker knows. The second schematic showed the same timer, but with subtle differences. A gear ratio changed by a single tooth. A spring tension adjusted by a fraction of a newton. Modifications so small they would be invisible to inspection, but devastating to function. The ones I delivered to the Wehrmacht, Ernst said quietly, were built exactly to specification. They would arm after the set delay, ready to detonate the shell on impact or proximity. Perfect triggers for delayed bombardment. He tapped the hidden crate. These? These will never arm. The timing mechanism advances normally, but at the critical moment, a deliberately weakened pawl fails. The circuit never closes. The shell becomes a dud. Fairweather lifted one of the modified timers, examining it under the workshop's best light. The workmanship was extraordinary. Without the schematic to guide him, he would never have spotted the sabotage. You swapped them. You delivered the real ones and kept the defective ones. No. Ernst's smile was grim. I delivered the defective ones, and I kept the ones that work. The implication hit like a physical blow. For 18 months, Ernst Dietrich had been systematically sabotaging Germany's artillery capability, one microscopically modified component at a time. 947 delayed action fuses, each one a dud waiting to fail in the field. And he had documented everything, kept the evidence, maintained the working versions as proof of what he had done. They'll kill you if they find out, Fairweather said. The Gestapo evacuated with the Wehrmacht 4 days ago, but there are others, Germans who still believe, who still fight. Ernst crushed out his cigarette. I am an old man, Sergeant. I have done what I could, but now I need you to understand why I showed you this. He moved to a cabinet and withdrew a worn leather journal, its pages filled with precise handwriting and technical sketches. Every unit I built, every modification I made, every shell that failed in the field, and I have kept track, listening to reports, making notes. The 88mm batteries outside Frankfurt, the long-range guns at the Ruhr pocket, the coastal defenses at Holland. His finger traced down columns of dates and locations. 713 confirmed duds. Artillery shells that should have exploded but didn't. Positions that should have held but collapsed when their covering fire failed. Fairweather took the journal with shaking hands. The implications were staggering. How many American lives saved by shells that didn't explode? How many positions taken because German artillery proved mysteriously unreliable? The old man had waged his own secret war, one gear tooth at a time, and the evidence suggested he had been devastatingly effective. Why are you showing me this? Why not just destroy everything and keep quiet? Ernst's eyes held a profound sadness. Because there are more, not my work, other workshops, other craftsmen forced into similar service. The Reich has stockpiles of these fuses scattered across Germany, warehouses full of delayed action ammunition, and some of it, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Some of it was made by people who did not have my knowledge or my courage. Some of it is real. He pulled out a map, marked with locations in red ink. Munitions depot outside Kassel, underground facility near Stuttgart, rail yard at Mannheim. The Wehrmacht documented everything, because Germans always document. Before they evacuated, an officer once made a watch for a decent man who hated what his country had become. He gave me this. Locations where specialty munitions were stored, including your fuses, including all kinds of sophisticated weaponry, proximity fuses, time delay bombs, experimental devices. Ernst's voice dropped to a whisper. And chemical artillery shells, Sergeant, the kind that your army needs to find before someone desperate decides to use them. The room seemed to contract around them, the weight of revelation pressing down like the rain outside. Fairweather understood now why Ernst had taken the risk of revealing himself. This wasn't just about one old man's resistance. It was about preventing catastrophe in the war's final days. I need to bring my captain, Fairweather said, and probably someone from intelligence. Can you wait here? I have waited 18 months. I can wait another few hours. Ernst returned to his workbench, to the mundane pocket watch repair that camouflaged his extraordinary work. But, Sergeant, you should know. The officer who gave me the map, he said something else. There are others like me, craftsmen who build defects into critical components, engineers who sabotage their own designs. Germany's industrial capacity looks impressive on paper, but beneath the surface, he gestured at the hidden workshop with its cache of deliberately broken machinery. Perhaps we are not so efficient as the world believes. Fairweather drove back through the rain, his mind reeling. At division headquarters, Captain Cross listened to the initial report with growing incredulity, then assembled a team. Within 3 hours, a convoy returned to Mühlbach. 2 intelligence officers, a German-speaking interrogator, a demolitions expert, and a counterintelligence specialist who had spent the past year tracking Nazi weapons programs. Ernst Dietrich told his story again, this time with the journal open on the workshop table, evidence laid out in neat rows. The intelligence officers verified the technical specifications against captured German documents. The demolitions expert examined the modified fuses with a magnifying glass, finally nodding in professional appreciation at the sophistication of the sabotage. The gear ratio is brilliant, the specialist said. Advances normally through 95% of the timing cycle, then the modified Paul shears under load. It would look like a manufacturing defect, not sabotage. That was the point, Ernst replied. The Gestapo inspector came monthly. He examined samples, tested mechanisms, but these passed every static test. Only under full load conditions, after the complete timing sequence, would the flaw reveal itself. By then, the inspector was gone, and I was building the next month's quota. The counterintelligence specialist, a major named Carlyle, who wore the expression of someone who had seen too much duplicity to be easily impressed, studied the map with its red markings. If this is accurate, and if even half these stockpiles still exist, you've handed us actionable intelligence that could shorten the war by weeks. He looked up at Ernst. Why not contact the resistance, the French networks, the British SOE? Why wait until now? Because I am not a spy, Major. I am a clockmaker. Ernst's hands moved to the pocket watch on his workbench, resuming the delicate work of setting a hairspring. I know precision instruments. I know timing mechanisms. I do not know codes or dead drops, or how to contact mysterious networks. I knew only that I could build what they asked for, and I could build it wrong, and I could do so in a way they would not detect. Your daughter, Fairweather interjected. You mentioned your daughter in Berlin. The old man's hands stilled. Greta. She was a teacher, classical literature. The Gestapo arrested her in 1943 for the crime of assigning a banned book to her students. They offered me a choice, build what they needed, perfectly and on schedule, or she would disappear into the camps. He resumed his work, his voice steady despite the tremor in his fingers. I built what they needed, but I built it my way. Major Carlyle made notes in a leather-bound field book. We'll need you to come to headquarters. Full debriefing. If these locations are accurate, we'll mount recovery operations immediately. And if they find her? Ernst didn't look up from the watch mechanism. My daughter. If your army reaches Berlin, if she survived, we'll add her name to the search lists, Captain Cross said quietly. Greta Dietrich, teacher, arrested 1943. It's the least we can do. Over the next 48 hours, Ernst Dietrich's map proved its worth. Combat engineers reached the castle depot before it could be destroyed, securing 3,000 artillery shells with various specialty fuses. The Stuttgart facility yielded experimental proximity fuses and technical documentation that would later influence American weapons development. The Mannheim rail yard contained stockpiled chemical munitions, which were immediately secured and eventually destroyed under strict protocols. But it was the journal that proved most valuable. Ernst's meticulous records, cross-referenced with combat reports and dud shell analyses, revealed the scope of his private war. Allied bomb disposal units had been puzzling over the high failure rate of certain German artillery types. Batteries that should have decimated assault positions had instead delivered salvos where 30 to 40% of rounds failed to detonate. Analysts had attributed it to declining manufacturing quality, material shortages, the degradation of German industrial capacity under sustained bombing. The truth was simpler and more profound. One old man with a lathe and a conscience had waged war with the only weapons he possessed: knowledge, precision, and the invisible sabotage of microscopic modifications. The intelligence assessment, classified and circulated only to senior command, estimated that Ernst Dietrich's sabotage had directly prevented between 800 and 1,200 Allied casualties. Indirectly, by degrading German artillery effectiveness at critical junctures, his work had contributed to breakthrough operations that saved countless more lives. The report recommended a commendation, though the details would remain classified for decades. Ernst himself seemed indifferent to recognition. He remained at division headquarters for 2 weeks, consulting on German manufacturing methods, identifying other potential sabotage points in captured weapons systems, and waiting for news from Berlin. Fairweather spent several evenings with the old Clockmaker, learning the finer points of precision manufacturing while Ernst shared stories of a different Germany. The Weimar years, when Mühlbach had prospered. The slow corruption of decent people under Nazi ideology. The moment when resistance changed from loud opposition to quiet sabotage because survival demanded it. "I am not a hero, Sergeant," Ernst said one evening, his hands steady as he demonstrated the art of cutting a gear tooth. "Heroes are brave. Heroes accept risk gladly. I was simply a craftsman who could not live with building weapons that killed innocents. So I built them badly." He held up the partially completed gear, backlit against the workshop lamp. "In my business we have a saying, the difference between precision and failure is measured in thousandths. I simply chose which kind of precision to deliver." April 27, 1945. Berlin fell to Soviet forces. The chaos of the city's collapse made immediate searches impossible. But as order emerged from the rubble, Allied liaison officers distributed lists of priority individuals to locate. Teachers, scientists, artists, medical personnel, the German citizens whose skills and knowledge would be needed to rebuild civilization from the ashes. Greta Dietrich's name appeared on those lists. June 3, 1945. A Red Cross telegram reached division headquarters, now relocated to Mannheim. Ernst Dietrich was in the workshop that had been set up for him. The Army had discovered that his expertise in precision manufacturing made him invaluable for maintaining sensitive equipment. When Fairweather brought him the message, Greta Dietrich, age 38, located in Berlin, British sector, health poor but stable. Released from detention facility outside the city, requesting contact with family. The old man read the telegram 3 times, his hand shaking so badly that Fairweather had to guide him to a chair. "She is alive," he whispered. "After all this time, after everything, she is alive. They're arranging transport," Fairweather said. "You'll be able to see her within the week." Ernst looked up, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Tell me, Sergeant, was it worth it? All the risk, all the deception, all those months of building lies into metal, was it worth it?" Fairweather thought of the Castle Depot, the chemical weapons secured before they could be used in desperation. He thought of the combat reports, the positions taken with lighter casualties than expected, the German batteries that failed at crucial moments. He thought of the soldiers who went home to families because artillery shells didn't explode, because one old man built failures into metal with a precision that only a master could achieve. 713 confirmed duds, he said quietly. That's 713 shells that didn't kill anyone. 713 chances for someone to go home. If that's not worth it, I don't know what is. Ernst returned to Mühlbach in August 1945, accompanied by his daughter. The workshop reopened, returning to its original purpose. Making clocks, repairing watches, crafting precision timepieces for a world trying to measure time in peace rather than war. The hidden compartment remained empty now, a reminder of the secret war waged in microscopically modified gear teeth and deliberately weakened pawls. The liberation of Germany revealed the scope of quiet resistance that had operated beneath the Reich's surface. Factory workers who built defects into critical components, engineers who sabotaged their own designs, clerks who misfiled crucial documents, accountants who corrupted inventory systems, a network of individual acts, uncoordinated but collectively devastating. each person using their particular skills to wage war against the machine they were forced to serve. Ernst Dietrich's contribution became known among military historians decades later, when classified files were finally released. The journal, preserved in military archives, documented not just technical specifications but a moral choice made in the worst of times. When direct opposition meant death, when open resistance was impossible, when the only option was collaboration or annihilation, he had found a third way. He had collaborated in form while resisting in substance, building weapons that looked perfect but were designed to fail. The old clockmaker lived until 1962, long enough to see Germany rebuilt, to see his daughter return to teaching, to see the next generation learn history in classrooms rather than repeat it in battlefields. He maintained his workshop until the end, taking apprentices, teaching the art of precision manufacturing to young craftsmen who would never need to choose between their skills and their conscience. His final apprentice, a young man named Stefan Hauser, asked him once about the war years. Ernst was 86 then, his hands finally too unsteady for the finest work, his eyes requiring powerful magnification for the mechanisms he once manipulated by feel alone. "I made clocks," the old man said, his voice faint but certain. "I made timers that never triggered. I made precision instruments that were precisely wrong in ways only I could see." He held up a pocket watch, restored to perfect function, its movement visible through the glass back. "This is what I chose to make with my skill. Not weapons that ended lives, but mechanisms that measured time. Because time, young Stefan, time is all any of us really have, and how we choose to spend it, what we choose to build with it, that is the only measurement that matters." The pocket watch ticked on, marking seconds into history. Precision crafted into metal by hands that had once waged war with the microscopic failures of sabotaged mechanisms. In the end, Ernst Dietrich's legacy was measured not in the weapons he built, but in the weapons he broke, not in the destruction he enabled, but in the destruction he prevented, one invisible modification at a time. The clockmaker's secret war had been fought in thousandths of an inch, in gear ratios altered by a single tooth, in springs calibrated to fail rather than function. It was a war without glory, without witnesses, without recognition until long after victory had been won by other means. But it was no less real for its invisibility, no less significant for its secrecy. In the workshop in Mühlbach, clocks continued to mark time with the precision that only a master craftsman could achieve. Perfect mechanisms, built to last, crafted by hands that had once understood the profound difference between building something that works and building something that doesn't, between collaboration and resistance, between the appearance of perfection and the reality of deliberate failure. The difference, as Ernst Dietrich knew better than most, was measured in thousandths. And sometimes, in a world gone mad, those thousandths were all that stood between survival and annihilation, between complicity and conscience, between the clockmaker who served the Reich and the clockmaker who fought his own secret war, one broken gear tooth at a time. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.